Welcome back, everyone. Conklin Company post-election edition with London Mitchell, Fletcher Word, and Tom Troy. Now we're going to move on to the Senate race. What was a bruising battle, kind of a nasty battle between the incumbent Sherrod Brown and the treasurer Josh Mandel. And you take a look at the polls. Many of the polls in the presidential campaign were spot on. Right. In all the swing states, the polls here had Sherrod Brown leading by 4 to 6 points, and it became a 5-point victory.
Well, none of the polls really gave any credence to the third party candidate here, but it ended up, I think, with about 50 to 45%. So it was, so Sherrod Brown got a bare majority of the vote, but really he won in large part because his opponent was not a strong opponent. Despite having something like $40–50 million to spend, there were issues about his campaign that everybody was aware of, and they were amply displayed in all the TV commercials from Sherrod Brown. His hiring of cronies, the fact that he never went to the Board of Deposit meetings. He just came across as a candidate who wasn't ready to go to Washington, having just been elected state treasurer.
And he had Scott Rupert, to your point, Tom, picked up 4.59% of the vote, just about the margin of victory for Sherrod Brown. And what about the thought that he was the treasurer? He beat Richard Cordray. He had upset him. Nobody thought he would win years ago. That he would pull off that win.
He beat Kevin Boyce. Kevin Boyce it was, and that was sort of an upset. You know, that sort of 2010 tidal wave that the Republicans came in. But speaking of tidal waves, I mean, you know, around the country, as you look at the Democratic gains in the Senate, we see this message repeated. You know, in just about every place, there were some surprising results, welcome results for the Democrats in so many Senate races.
Yeah, it was really it was a good night for Democrats here in Ohio.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about Mike DeWine, an Attorney General, beating Richard Cordray a couple of years ago.
I think, though, that we don't want to forget the tons of money that came in from those outside political action committees to battle Sherrod Brown. There was a ton of money, and I think this particular election between Brown and Mandel really is the poster child for whether or not this is going to be a debatable topic. And I wouldn't be surprised over the next 4 years if money isn't a real
it's a bad night for Karl Rove.
Bad night for misspent money. Linda McMahon, who lost the Senate race in Connecticut. A lot of money was wasted by super PACs and by individual candidates in this race. I'm not saying money doesn't matter, but the candidate matters, and the issues matter. Money's just
and the campaign matters.
And the campaign.
You had Sherrod Brown's campaign was a very well-run campaign. And he's a good candidate, and of course the ground game of the Obama campaign was very effective.
You know, for the most part, there were many negative ads, but I think one ad that will stick out for me was the Sherrod Brown driving the Chevy Cruze ad. It was a positive ad. It was all about successes in Ohio. And I think that resonated with Ohio voters.
It was a tremendously well-produced commercial, and it was right on for where we in Ohio were thinking we were going. We're coming back, and that was the positive image. It reminded me a lot of Ronald Reagan. He always seemed to be on the white horse with a big white hat when he was doing his campaigning, and I think that commercial was just right on.
All right, congressional races really they were not close, but the Marcy Kaptur, Joe the Plumber race, she wins by a wider margin than any other congressional candidate in Ohio.
Well, 73%, and you can attribute that to the fact that the district that was created for her, not because the Republicans love her, but because they wanted to squeeze as many Democrats as possible into her district. As you know, the Republicans who wrote the redistricting map created 4 districts that they wanted to squeeze as many Democrats as possible into, and those 4 went to Democrats. The other 12 went to Republicans. So, and the other aspect here was, of course, Samuel Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher's campaign, which was largely non-existent.
Yeah, close to home, the landslide that Bob Latta enjoyed in District 5 surprised me. That district had been redistricted almost at the in order to to squeeze the Democrat, as you say, Marcy against Dennis Kucinich. And that that district, which has been Republican since the mid-30s, was expanded more into Lucas County and Toledo. And as the Zinman people did their work last year, they looked at it and said, you know, there are a lot of Democrats in this district. They estimate there were 2% more Democrats than Republicans at that time.
But there were more than twice as many Republicans as there were Democrats. It really was not a Democratic district as in the final analysis.
No, in the final analysis it was.
And about
not,
even
no.
Steven in Lucas County, if you break down the vote there. In that, for the 5th district, the extra Democrats that came in.
Right.
But many people felt she ran an aggressive campaign, a spirited campaign. You didn't see much of Bob Latta. You saw his kids, you saw his wife. But
well, he was
no debate.
But I think he had the familiar name, and I can't escape the thought that people went to vote and they were looking for Marcy's name, and it wasn't there on the ballot. They didn't realize that how the districts had been redrawn. We've lived in Toledo. We have voted for Marcy Kaptur for how many decades now? And she's not there on the ballot, but Latta's familiar name was there, and I think that had a lot to do with it.
We would be remiss if we didn't point out that Latta's father, Del Latta, was the congressman in that
30
district
years.
from 30 years, from 59 to 89.
And before him, Cliff Clevenger was the congressman for 20 years. So in 1939 to the present day, a Republican has held that seat. Paul Gilmore. So good luck if you're a Democrat in the 5th, right?
In the 5th.
In the 5th congressional district. All right, we're going to come back in just a minute and talk about some hyper-local races and those issues as well, all those levy issues on the ballot for Lucas County residents when we come back in just a minute.